The roguelike craze has taken over creature collecting games, from spin-offs like Temtem Swarm and Coromon Rogue Planet to new IPs like Aethermancer and Chart Squad. There is a clear shift in what gaming studios are working on. So why do monster battlers fit well into the roguelike format? And what does that mean for the future of the classic Pokémon formula? First, let us define what I mean by roguelike. Roguelike games are based on repeatable runs with an element of randomization. In games like Aethermancer, which uses turn-based combat, runs have a limited number of events until you fight the final boss. For action roguelikes like Temtem Swarm, the run is based on timed events, such as the final boss spawning after surviving 20 minutes. A key characteristic of any roguelikes is that mistakes come with a price. Whether it is the permadeath of a beloved monster or a complete game over, the element of loss is unavoidable. That changes the stakes for the player. Another element of roguelikes is the offering of randomized upgrades. These come in various forms, such as new skills or passive boosts, but they are limited only to that specific run. On the flip side, roguelikes also present the player a way to progress with permanent upgrades. This is fundamental, especially since unlocks, such as new characters, tend to be tied behind such achievements. Let me show you 3 different roguelikes as an example of how varied these can be. From the developers of Monster Sanctuary, Aethermancer is a strategic turn-based roguelike. Every decision matters. Planning your actions is key as you can stun enemies through the stagger mechanic. Fail to protect your team and they will slowly build corruption until you inevitably lose. Although it may feel punishing, I appreciate the fact that every battle matters. Then we have Temtem Swarm, which is a horde survivor game with co-op functionality. Throughout the run, your TAM automatically uses their skills to defeat waves of enemies. Choose to upgrade your skills and gear to power up and discover synergized attacks. Let's face it, who does not enjoy an epic pick-a-pick moment? Sharing a similar Bullet Haven style, Fetch Quest is a wonderful game to highlight. Using your lasso, you tame monsters and mount them to use their abilities as you navigate through the labyrinth. Seeing the percentages of unlocks after every run continuously motivated me to go out one more time and find something new. Now that we have an understanding of what roguelikes look like, why is it that monster battling games are going the roguelike route? The first crucial element is the time commitment for the player. In Pokémon Legends ZA, you play for 3 hours and you're still locked into the story without any free will of capturing your own Pokémon. In a roguelike, you would have already won your first run and probably lost 4 matches in the process. But the problem of the classic games is not only in the onboarding section. Classic RPGs can be too linear. You might arrive in a new town, aim to compete in a gym, but end up being dragged into meaningless side quests with no clear path to your next badge. Roguelikes offer a consistent promise. If you have 30 minutes to play, you know that you can finish a run of Chart Squad. You have a formulaic understanding of what to expect. And in doing so, roguelikes are inherently more exciting to your brain with short-term rewards. They provide engagement from the first minute, and you will never experience a large cave of mindlessly one-shotting Zubats and Geodudes. The next key reason why monster battlers perform well as roguelikes is that they provide an exciting challenge. In recent generations, Pokémon has been heavily criticized for being too easy. You will often see an over-leveled starter one-shotting every enemy as the player breezes through the game. As a result, many fans play with self-imposed rules, like the well-known Nuzlocke mode. These rules add an element of randomization, where players have to capture the first Pokémon in each area. This forces a layer of forced experimentation, allowing players to discover new strengths and synergies. In addition, players have to release any Pokemon that faints. This risk of permadeath changes how players approach battles, with better use of status moves and switching. You may have noticed, but both these elements, randomization and permadeath, are characteristics of roguelike games. These modes are great answers to the problems of Pokemon-like games, so much so that indie games like Temtem and Cassette Beasts offer randomizer and Nuzlocke modes within their game officially. The caveat is that these modes are generally secondary in design, and they do not promise a balanced experience. This is where roguelikes become a better fit. The strategy and balance is baked into the game design from the start. In Aethermancer, taking damage corrupts your monsters, and this corruption lasts between battles, lowering the starting health. This type of risk heightens the strategic element. Your goal in a battle becomes to protect your team as best as possible. This can be done through the use of protective skills like shields, or through swift offensive decisions that can stun or eliminate your opponents as quickly as possible. Another reason why roguelikes become more natural than Nuzlocke modes is that the loss of a run is expected. If in a Nuzlocke run you lose at the Elite Four to a critical hit after having spent 30 hours training your team, that would suck. But what happens if you lose at the final boss in Temtem Swarm? You redeem your kudos, upgrade your temp skills, and play another run. This watered down impact of loss encourages the player to express and hone their skills. You can attempt to build teams with odd synergies or select a combination of gears which can have a high payoff with a weaker punishment should it not work out. And that brings me to my next point. Why do these monster battling roguelikes feel so good? One of the things creature collectors often appreciate is replayability. Whether it is starting over in a Nuzlocke game or shiny hunting for thousands of hours, players in this genre show a dedication unlike no other. And by players I mean myself included. I have 5,000 hours in Temtem. The downside of this longevity is that the repetition can become stale. Let's take Fire Red and Leaf Green. The limited Pokemon pool means you will often have similar teams facing the first couple of gyms. In contrast, roguelikes are inherently replayable, without a formulaic guarantee of a victory. This game design allows for a risk that can have higher payoffs without severe punishment. This is due to the focus on adaptability and experimentation, especially as achievements are tied to using different characteristics or combinations. And that is what gives roguelikes a greater sense of purpose. Instead of a linear story progression, players have a set of challenges to complete, which would unlock new characters and obtain permanent upgrades. Now, one may counter-argue that roguelikes, however, do not qualify as creature collectors due to the lack of permanence, and that is a very valid concern. What often draws us into games like Pokémon and Temtem is that you go through the whole journey with your starter and other creatures that you became friends with along the way. Then, after we finish the main quest, we want to catch every type of creature, maybe even in their shiny forms. We gotta catch them all. Roguelikes, however, may not always deliver that experience. That said, it is not impossible. For example, in Patch Quest, monsters that you tame can be brought back as pets on your ranch. From these pets, you can select up to 5 in your party, which you can then summon throughout your next runs. And in addition, you also have other collections to complete, like the pins that you put in your patches. For me, those elements still qualify as a creature collector. That said, roguelike games will not fully replace the RPG system. So why is it that we are seeing more of these monster battling roguelikes? In short, roguelikes are more practical to develop. Apart from designing hundreds of creatures, a classic RPG requires many additional elements: cohesive storyline, characters that evolve throughout said story, engaging dialogues, and a graphical world with multiple maps and buildings, and let's face it, even with the biggest budgets, Pokemon main games still lack voice acting and show buildings which you cannot enter, so why would we expect indie developers to compete with those enormous budgets? Roguelikes are much smaller in scale. This is not to say that they are easy to build. If anything, they may have more difficulty to stand out. However, they do not require large dialogues or open world maps, making them cheaper to develop. The cost is further reduced for studios who use existing universes to launch spin-off games, like Temtem Swarm and Coromon Rogue Planet, as they make use of creature designs that already exist. That presents a concern for us fans of creature collecting games. Will indie studios abandon the classic Pokémon style games? I don't think that's the case. In actuality, roguelike games are helping out the main games for said studios. Let's take Coromon as an example. While the developers work on Rogue Planet, they have polished a better gameplay experience and user interface. As a consequence, they decided to update the main Coromon game with a remastered version for free. For the Temtem universe, Temtem Swarm provides a very distinct experience. It allows the studio to reach a new audience and gives existing fans a new way to experience Tems, while their main teams continue to work on their next project down below. So, roguelikes aren't just good games, they're good business. Through innovation of new mechanics and sustainability of gaming studios, roguelikes are leaving a positive impact on the creature collecting genre, even for those of you who may not enjoy said games. Will they replace the classic Pokémon formula? No, and I don't think they should. But I do think they're pushing the genre forward and helping it evolve in ways that mainline games have failed to achieve. As a fan of both roguelikes and creature collectors, the future of monster taming looks pretty exciting to me, and I look forward to the day that Pokémon releases their own roguelike version. Who's with me? Let me know in the comments below which are your favorite monster battling roguelikes. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you around. Bye bye.